Hello.
Hey there.
So we're joined today by Dominic Scaffidi, who is a master certified coach. Dominic's credentialed with the International Coaching Federation and has worked with leaders, teams, entrepreneurs, and individuals to achieve their professional and personal aspirations. Dominic's coaching approach points clients to a realization of all that they are as they focus on creating their most important desires. Dominic, it's so cool to have you here with us. It really is. I'm so excited for this. And what your intro doesn't say is your incredible sense of humor. So this is an open invitation to bring all of that.
We said, didn't we, Lisa? We said just before this call, we said Dominic's the perfect person to have towards the end of a working day, because obviously we're in the UK, it's the end of a working day, because you always bring such an incredible energy and a smile and a sense of humor. And we said a very British sarcasm, which we appreciate.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Is there anything, Dominic, before we get into the meat of it, is there anything that you want to add in terms of an introduction to yourself? Anything that you want to share?
No, that was good. It's like this coaching thing is so blurred for me in terms of and I think for a lot of people who get into this, it's a very blurred thing. It's like, it's who I am, right? So then you start adding, what is that? It's a coach. I think it's a coach, right? Or people even tell you that, right? Like it's like, oh, that was great coaching. And so, but it really, for many of us who come into this, we come into it because it's like a calling, and that's probably a good word. It's calling, and you've been doing this all your life, and so it's like you can see evidence of this everywhere in your life, and so yeah, that's a feeling about it.
You are never going to know how perfect that was. It was like that was meant to happen, because my first question for you was going to be, tell me how you got into coaching.
Yeah. Well, and maybe, and this is for people may have experienced something like this, but, so you kind of, as a teen or growing up, but you start to notice what you get interested in, where your attention starts to go. And, somewhere, I was always interested in myself from who am I and what is this, and this whole thing about our potential. I've got potential. What is that? And how do you bring that out? And what, right? And then noticing with friends, like, it's kind of the most natural thing in the world, right? Like it's a friend and they're all upset or discouraged about something. And I'd be like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Like, don't you see this? Like, don't you see who you are or what, So this type of thing would go on. And, for people, I guess, many people have these kinds of experiences. But you start to notice, I'm always drawn there. I spend a lot of time there. And so as I got into through 20s and stuff, and as I was, really developing more insights about this and people and ourselves, our nature, right? And then you get feedback like, I really like our conversations. I appreciate talking to you. I found that so helpful, right? But I bring this story up because that would be if I look, say, around late 20s, where I first heard this. This goes back now 30 years. Sorry, I can't believe it, right? But it goes back, and I first hear this word coaching, right? And coaching, this is cool. Coaching. Coach, be a coach, right? But it occurs to me like this description of something that I do, which would be like saying, oh, you're such a great dancer, love watching you dance. Oh, you really play the guitar really well. That's amazing. You've got real talent. Or you paint. so it occurred to me sort of like, that's fine, that's good. And so, but anyway, so what do I do like for a job, right? So totally dismiss what's natural, what's calling you, what's there. Well, that's fine, but that's, you can't live your life doing this, right? And so let's just talk about now. So this is kind of what happened, is I then get into a career, which is, you know, a corporate career in organizations. And of course, you can't squash who you are. So it begins to show up within it. I, you know, started in sales at a Procter & Gamble's, you know, monolithic organization. Most amazing, you know, training and development I've ever had, and an understanding. And luckily within the organization, they had a real focus on people development, right? But then that drew me in. People development as a manager, my team, my people, development of people. So I drifted more and more into this kind of stuff within organizations, which eventually said, you know, you should look at HR because these hobbies you have, imagine being a salesperson, and then I'm interested in sales, recruiting, and training and development of salespeople, right? Well, it's kind of HR does that. And it's like, oh yeah, but I want to get into it. I want to start doing that. Well, eventually my hobbies start to overtake everything, because that's what I'm drawn to and called to. So then there's this corporate career that kind of happened in it and all of that. And so there was these aspects drawn out. Ultimately, you know, after a 20-year corporate career, I 10 years ago, 12 years ago, kind of came out of the corporate world. Last role I had was a VP of HR. And when I came out and the corporate world, and there was a restructure, so it was sudden, and my job was eliminated and everything, and it was shocking, right? But I'm like, what am I going to do, right? And so first thing was like a consultant. I'll be a consultant. An HR consultant is what I'm going to do. And right away, now when you're outside that kind of a structure, you really start to notice, what do I love and what don't I love? Oh my God, I don't want to do I don't want to develop a performance management system. I'm not interested in this. And so then what is it you do love? And I start noticing what I'm doing in my work. And then it was like coaching. And so someone said, well, why don't you be an executive coach? And I'm like, what? And then an executive coach, yeah, an executive coach. So I began like researching that, and then went and got a certification, and there was a graduate program and certification in executive coaching. And so I went and did that, and then it felt like, when you come back to the beginning of the story, in the graduation, sitting around, there was like a circle, and we're there, right? We're now certified executive coaches, right? And it felt like, oh my God, I could have done this 30 years ago. It was like, but I needed everything in the journey, right? Well, sorry, 20 years ago, but at that time, but I needed everything in the journey to sort of say, you really love painting. You could be a painter, but it took that long to believe it. Like, sort of to believe it. You mean I could just do who I am? Like, I could just be who I am? Is that what you're saying? And then you can actually earn a living from that. You could just do that. Are you serious? Really? You could do that in life, in the world? Yeah, we're in our own way.
Yeah, so it was really knocking on the door for a while there, like, hey, I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, I'm doing a legitimate job, right? I'm going to do that, right? Do the legitimate job.
Mm.
Because when something is there and inherent and natural, to sort of think that that's work, a career, a profession, takes a while.
And it points to like how much, because I mean, these days, it really does seem like anything is possible, right? So people really are finding ways for their hobbies and their passions to be their income and making really strong incomes from it. And it seems like now more than ever, there's so much opportunity to do that. And I guess with coaching, it's becoming more popular, it's becoming more commonplace. And so maybe that was the thing, where it's like it just didn't occur because we were taught about these job titles. Like this was the path. So it's like knocking, trying to come through, but that wasn't my wiring. And so I didn't hear it.
You're right. It could be said that, you know, how we're showing up at all times is just one big limitation, right? It really, it's like it's one big limitation. Now, I don't mean it negatively, because well, of course you are showing up as one big limitation, because who you really are is an enormous possibility, right? Of nothing, right? Well, nothing doesn't show up very well. It doesn't really impact much. So you've got to show up as one big limitation, in a way, one big definition, right? So in that you can show up, but then the tricky part becomes you do realize you're limiting yourself, right? Were you kidding? You should have seen me 10 years ago. Like, look at me here. Yeah, and you're limiting yourself, because that's just what it is. And so that's interesting too, because in our ongoing work, all of us, especially us coaches, it's just a continual, so where are you limiting yourself? So where are you limiting yourself now? How are you, right? And it's a little bit like, are you looking at that? No, I'm coaching people. Yeah. And you're asking them to look at that? So what about you, though? In your business, in your work, in your coaching, right? You do realize you're limiting yourself, right? It's because we are. It's not bad and wrong. I'm not saying anybody's bad and wrong. It's just what it is. And so do you do that? Are you awake to understanding that that's what it is, that's what's happening? So the next time you run into a problem and you say, well, you know, I can't get any clients and I can't find this, and this is really hard and my business is really pressure. It's like, you do realize you're limiting yourself, right? Like you do realize you made that all up.
Yeah.
So.
It's funny. Sam and I were in a coaching session with our coach recently, and he was asking us, like, what's different? What's the difference now? And I don't remember, Sam, your exact words, but it was something like, we're really willing to keep looking and looking and looking until it feels like there's nothing more to explore. Then we keep looking.
Yeah. So I don't know if we'll ever get to that point. It seems to me that there is no end point in that respect. And I know that when we have conversations like this, we spoke just before this conversation, Dominic, didn't we? Like being in alignment with how we want these conversations to serve. And one of the things we spoke about was really having coaches see and understand like where they might be limiting themselves, or where they are limiting themselves, and how to stay in this game of coaching and create what they want to create. I'd love to hear more from you about, you know, where do people, because when we say you're limiting yourself, the question of, well, how do I start looking at that? Like, how do I start looking at where am I limiting myself? Like, what would you say to that if there are people out there listening to this thinking, oh man, he's so right. This is me creating the limitation. Now what?
Yes. So let's, that's such a great question, right? And then And this will really look at sort of in my approach or how I work with people too, is where to look is in fact, it's so a bit paradoxical. So rather than even bothering with the limitation or exploration, is where to look is toward desire, and calling, right? The limitations and everything in the way will come up as you look toward what you're called toward, right? So as the, and people will talk about this as a feeling, like look toward the feeling, what feels good, what is calling me, where do I dream? Like, what's the dream, right? Because, this kind of gets to like who we are is nothing, like nothing. It's an energy. It can be called consciousness. It's simply an energetic, and it's all possibility, the possibility of all things, right? That's bliss. If you say a disappearing into that is bliss, is love, pure love, joy, bliss, peace, right? So disappearing into all of that is that. Good to know, because now you know the direction. Good to know, isn't it? Now you know the direction, you know home. And here's the thing, and it never changes. That is eternal state. That's the truth, right? So really good to know. Now you can't get lost. There's home, steady state, always calling you back through a very unique path for you. And why is it unique? Because you're uniquely limited, self-limiting. You're uniquely sort of bought into stuff, conditioned yourself about who you are and what you're good at and what you're not good at, and how people make money, and it's a bad thing that I don't want to do, and who I am is really this noble blah blah, like you just made up all kinds of stuff. And you don't know that you did, but you did. And so you're sort of this much smaller thing. But what the source of that is this steady state truth that never alters. So that will always be there. It will always call you. And so the feeling will tell you, how blended am I in this moment versus not? Well, I don't know, I'm worried, and I really don't like that I have to do this stuff, and it's so much hard work to do that, and that's not why I started coaching. I didn't want to have to do social media. Why am I having to do it when what I wanted to do? It's like, okay, that's a lot of noise going on. Which right away, so it's like to Sam's question about the limitations is, oh, you don't even need to look for them. Yeah. If you just sitting in what the calling is, everything in the way will make itself apparent. Yeah. Right? This isn't easy, and the statistics say you can't make a lot of money with this anyway. Maybe I should go get a job. It's like everything in the way will just make itself known. All the beliefs you have, all the thinking you have, that's in the way. And here's the other cool thing, is that stuff, as you buy into it, will not feel good. It won't feel good. So just in case you're going, well, maybe I should analyze my beliefs, or maybe I should figure out what my thinking is. Yeah, don't worry about it. How do you feel right now? How do you feel right now about your coaching? Well, I'm a little worried about it. Okay, good. There you go. That's all you need to know. The only way you can be worried about something is you're identified right now and bought into and know the truth as some limitation, which is just not true. It can't be true because the truth, we said, is simple. It's only this one thing. So can't you tell by the feeling that there must be something in the way of this truth? And the worse you feel, the more is in the way, right? So it's like, I'm never going to make it. And not only that, but I've got bills coming up and I really need to do something about this. And this isn't a game anymore. I have to just say, yeah, you sound like you feel really, really bad. I do. I'm really worried. I'm getting anxious about it. Yeah. So what's that telling you? You're so lost in this untruth, right? That's what it means. That's all it means.
And this is the bit, isn't it, Dominic, where we were talking about, like, what is it that has the successful coaches stay on the path, and what's the difference between the coaches who do exit the industry and the ones that stay the distance? This is the crossroads.
Yeah. Which side of that they chose to believe, right? Which side of that they bought into, which side of that they began to respect and honor and move toward.
Yeah.
It's this worry is real, and it's only real because as you give it attention, it will show itself to you, not just as a feeling. You will see evidence with your physical senses about it, like the amount of money in your bank account, and whether the number of clients that sign up for you and don't sign up. This feeling, you will see the evidence for it physically. We're not talking amorphous thing here. It isn't just an energy. This energy will manifest and express into form. You, through your senses, you will actually see it. It will be a real world, right, that you're dealing with. Just the part you don't realize is that, and that real world is being expressed out from you. That's kind of like tricky. What do you mean? It's my bank account really is my bank account. I know, but the birth of it is somewhere far before it shows up there in a way that you can see it with your senses.
One of the things I'm observing, Dominic, is how much you're laughing at the struggle, right? So
I know.
You know this. So was this your experience for a while? Like, you were on this side of going, no, it is real.
Well, that's the thing, because like you have to laugh because it is really funny. Mm-hmm. Like, so you have to laugh. It's like, so hang on a second. What are you saying? You're saying I'm a god and I come here and I pretend I'm this little guy? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, pretty much we're saying that. But it's like if you knew who you were, it's like huge, right? Mm. And so isn't it kind of funny you're doing this? It's funny that you're doing this. Now, here, so it is funny.
It is funny. And it's funny. It's funny that we're fighting to stay the little guy.
Yeah, isn't it? Like I said, it's kind of like, what do you respect, honor, and give more attention to? This thought that I have that limits me, I'm going to pay attention to that. I want to talk to people about this. I want to talk to people about what to do about this. And the more you're respecting, honoring, dealing with it, the more real you make it, right? So that's funny. It's funny that you would do that. But it's all a matter of just waking up, because we're not going to change the way this works, right? The reason I bring this part up is I'm not saying that there's something wrong with this, because if you flip over to the other side, you have created this through this finite perspective. Who you really are, of course, has no such limitation. But you've created through this finite perspective these things, limitations, made yourself smaller. Necessarily so, because you wanted to play this game, right? So you want to play this game. But why would you play a game? For the fun of it. Why would you play a game? For the fun of it. If we take a metaphor that we're all going to play Monopoly, what for? Well, relax. For no reason, really. It's just we're going to play Monopoly. Okay, if we have to, then I'll be the little doggy and Sam is the car and you're going to be the boot or something, right?
Why do I get to be the boot?
I don't know. I didn't know.
It's been researching, Lisa. Been reading your website and getting to know you, obviously.
So here we are. We were like big people, right? Look at us, big people here having this serious conversation and say, let's play Monopoly, right? It's like, well, why do we want to do that? Well, just for fun, let's play. So what do? We're these big people and we get all focused into that I'm the little doggy, like for real, in a world that is this monopoly where there's properties I can buy and houses I can build, right? And we start to play. Now, the limitation we've created from these big people is useful. You know, there's rules. You know, you could go to jail, right? So there's all this limitation and you can't, well, why can't I just buy that one? Because you have to land on it. Who says that? Well, that's the way it works. And we've agreed. And so stop trying to like change. So we're going to have fun. We've agreed to certain things and it's very enjoyable, right? Until it isn't. And now I'm getting all upset because Sam's got hotels on Boardwalk and stuff. And I passed and I had to pay him. I'm nearly bankrupt now. And now you're getting upset. And at some point, one of you says, Dominic, wake up. It's a game. What are you doing? Why are you so upset? Well, because I'm going to be bankrupt and I'm going to, you forgot we're big people. We're just playing this game, right? Well, I don't like this. And I was like, well, wake up, will you? Don't you see we're playing a game, right? So the focus is fun. It's great until it isn't. You can tell by the feeling. And by the way, if you think you're going to come in and be all detached, right? So then I go, fine, okay. You've talked me into it. That's fine. I'll play, right? We go around and I'm like, it's just a game. And Lisa passes go and collects $200. And she's like, whoo, I collected it. Lisa, it's $200. It's play money. Don't you know this is a game? And then Lisa's like, okay, he's annoying. I don't want to play with him anymore. He's not getting into the game. He's not getting into the game, not engaging with life, not lost in life. Notice the balance in this. I was lost in life before, but I was really upset. But want to get lost in life, pretending it's real, or you're not going to have any fun, and somehow keep in mind that's just fun. There's just the joy in this. You should try things. Well, I'm afraid I don't want to buy this in case somebody takes the other railroad. It's just like, go for it. Like, what are you going to lose anyway? You're so close, like buy that thing. See, does that feel like fun? Well, then have some fun, right? So.
Gosh, I love that. We were actually talking to someone earlier around like consequences are not forever. So it's like, I lost the game. It's like, we'll play again.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Great.
I love that analogy, Dominic, because it reminds me that any time in my life where I've been suffering as such, it's because I thought I was the car.
Yeah.
I'm a car, and it's like I have to win, and I'm attached to the idea that I'm this car, and I can't believe I'm not be, and I get all defensive about me being a car, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, forgot. Sorry, guys. Sorry, forgot.
Right. And see the fine balance, right? It's kind of like, and then if you're like not the car and now you're Sam, and then we're like, Sam, are you going to get into the game or not? Like, what are you doing? Well, I'm walking around and I'll come, just tell me when it's my turn. It's like, no, we're not going to play with you. You either get into this game, be this car.
Yeah, totally. But that isn't that where the fun is though, where we get to be, because I really want to hear your take on this, Dominic. This is something me and Lisa are really passionate about, which is really being creative with our life. Because once you realize, oh, I'm not the car, oh, but I am playing the game and there are some rules here, so it makes the game fun and playable. It's like, hey, I can be really creative with my life. Like I can create my life. I can create me. I can create my life. I can create what I want. So I'd love to hear more from you about like the creative side of things. Like once we realize that we're not the car.
Very good. Yeah, very good. Yeah, because the metaphors break down and the analogies don't work, right? You're not stuck as the car. This is the possibility you start to see. You're not stuck as the car. In the real truth of it all is you made up the car too, right? You actually made up the player piece. And so the game, the metaphors start to break down, but it's like you need a player piece. You're the one making up the player piece. You have some sense of this game. You actually wanted to. So you walk around, you could play in any game you want. There's a lot of them going on, but this one looks like fun. I'm going to play this one. So, and you're going into it and you're doing everything. You're picking all of this. But then there you go. You're like, pick the piece and you forgot you pick the piece. Now you think you're stuck with this piece. And it's like, but you made this thing up. What do you mean? This is who I am, right? That you're lost, right? So there's this balancing, remembering who you are so that which from a creator perspective, all the power is there. All the power is when you stand in the metaphor is when you stand as Sam, as opposed to the piece. Because here's the funny thing, right? It's like, well, you're going to build a coaching business, you get clients, do whatever. Who's going to do that? Who? The car? Don't you know this car is... Look at this car. It doesn't do anything. Like it sits there, right? It's like where it all comes from. Where do the ideas come from? Where does the intelligence come from? You think it's the car? Look at this car. This car doesn't do anything. It's just, it doesn't move unless you move it, right? So that understanding of what's doing what. And now if you're lost in it, this is taking the metaphor. Now, if you're lost in it, you say, having trouble in my business, right? So first of all, you'd have to say, who said that? Business isn't going well. You'd have to say, who said that, right? Was that from the perspective of this car? Or was that you knowing something, right? So who said that? And now you want to solve the problem that you see in front of it. Who's going to solve the problem? This car is going to solve the problem. This car doesn't know anything, and this car is just freaking out and in anxiety and all of that. That finite little thing, right? If you think it can go around the board and figure anything out, you're mistaken. It doesn't do anything. All of the intelligence comes from here. It's a much broader perspective. You can see moving parts. You can see, and so that becomes the dynamic in this, is who am I listening to? And if you're in a state of, the feeling is what'll tell you. If you're worried and concerned and hopeless really about all this, I know who you're listening to. It's not the wiser part of you. Who you're listening to is not that, right? And that, I can tell you that if you were trying to work the business, you're better off listening to the wiser part of you than wasting your time with this one, right? So, but you got to distinguish those two perspectives and voices.
Mm. I feel like Sam has a question brewing, but I'm gonna jump in with one, because my experience of building a business, no program that I went through in terms of learning the skill of coaching, so coaching schools, for example, they didn't teach me any of this. They didn't teach me to look in the direction of who I really am. They didn't teach me that I wasn't the car. And I didn't know about any of this from the coaching schools that I went to link that to, this is going to make such a difference when it comes to enjoying growing your business, being totally in acceptance of where you're at in the growing of your business,
Mm-hmm.
and just the significance it makes to growing your business. So what was your experience of that, Dominic? Because I know you've done lots of certificates.
Yeah. Lots of these there's and I'm on the ICF, right? International Coaching Federation, ICF credentialed coach at master certified coach level, which is the highest credential, the ICF. After I got that, by the way, that's when it occurred to me that, oh, that's the beginner level. I started, right? It's like, oh, one day I'm going to be a master certified coach, right? And so, and you know, there's 3 credential levels, and then 10 years later, get this credential. I wish when I realized, oh, that was the beginner level. So now I'm on the path to mastery, right? And it's like, oh shit, right? I thought it was the credential that you achieve so that you're done, check the box, right? So yeah, I want to bring that context because there's something that happens in professional coaching and training and all of that stuff, which can speak to a little bit about maybe what you've experienced. So what I've come to see is ICF, which is, you know, was started from actual real transformative coaches who were just doing things in the world, but there was no such thing as coaching at that time. It wasn't a profession. ICF's 25 years old. So you could just go back 25 years and people were doing things. And someone said, this is coaching and we should legitimize it. We should talk about it. There's lots of us doing this. Why don't we talk to each other? Why don't we try to distinguish what this thing is we're doing? Why they said that was people would say, oh, so Lisa, you're a consultant and you can come and help us? Man, yeah, I guess so, right? In those days, right, Lisa's a consultant and she'll work with people. Oh, so you're a leadership development person? Yeah, I guess that's what I am. Yeah, I'll come in, I'll do that, right? Like, so, because if this term isn't there, what happened was these people, but when you look at the roots of it, it was kind of in a lot of edgy stuff. The roots of ICF come from a founder who was steeped in the work of Werner Erhard. A lot of coaching that, and coincidentally, how I have even first heard the word was through the work of Werner Erhard. So Werner Erhard is like pretty edgy, pretty leading edge, Est, the Forum, all kinds of stuff. So, so what they were doing was transformational. They knew what they were doing. They were going right at the possibility that it is to be a human being, right? This is the work that they were doing. In the formation of ICF, it was like, there's a lot of us doing stuff. Let's talk to each other. What is it that makes what we do different? We're not consultants. We're not really mentoring people. Like, they were trying to figure out, what the hell are we? Like, what do we do? Right? Well, it's a different approach. It's a different conversation. It's fundamentally beginning with a completely different premise, right? Well, are we trainers? Are we teaching people things about who they are? No, that doesn't work. We all know it doesn't work. So all of them, when you look at what they were doing, were specifically not that. They weren't trainers. They weren't facilitators. They weren't mentors. That stuff was available then, right? And what they were doing was different, right? Well, what the hell is it? How do we, every time we go into an organization or we're going to work with a leader, they want to know what we're doing, and we just kind of accept what they say. They say, oh, so are you going to facilitate the such and such? Yeah, I'll do that. But that's not what we're doing, because they're comparing us to the facility. They're comparing us to trainers. But then they say, your training session, it's different. It's not like those other training sessions. And so these folks kind of got together, and one of them, Thomas Leonard, began, let's get an association going and let's start talking about this. Eventually what it was like, let's distinguish it. Let's say what this is and how distinct it is from anything else. It's its own thing. And what it is a discovery of a conversation that can be had between people, which is transformational. And so that's different than to share things with people, to teach them things, to mentor, to do all this stuff. There's something different about this conversation. So early days, they were just trying to distinguish it. But then as time went on and more people came in with different experiences, grew into thousands of coaches, people doing this work all over the world, they began to do things like, what is it? Like, what are the competencies in this thing? And I'm not interested in this, but luckily people are, right? So people would watch coaching sessions and go, see, look at that. Look at these competencies. Do you see that listening? That listening is different. It's different than what goes on in the world. So let's distinguish, what is this competency of listening that's going on? What else are they doing? I don't know, they seem to be asking so many questions. These coaches seem to be asking questions. Why are they asking questions? Yeah, most of them seem to be asking questions and they're not really telling the person a lot. Isn't that odd? how does this work? And so they identified competencies and they began to, right? And so then that makes it easy to talk about, it makes it easy to understand. Now, eventually they accredited schools and what coaching is and what it isn't, and they began to accredit. And by the way, it evolves, it's not frozen. Recently, within the past year, the competencies that are coaching competencies have been revised or updated. So the grounding's there, and then they evolve to more, right? So, but what they're good at is training coaches. They're not, by the way, ICF does no training of coaches, just to be clear. They only accredit coach training. They don't do any of themselves, and then they credential coaches. And then what they say is that's a coach, right? And when they say that's a coach, what it is a demonstration of, with proof, because of what they make you go through and people auditing the actual sessions and stuff like that, is that they in other words, if you're claiming to do a coaching conversation for 60 minutes, right? In an audit, what they're looking at with competencies are, what's your ability with this competency? And by the way, are you doing anything that contravenes coaching? And I remember like, well, so what? I deliver value. They go, of course you do. People wouldn't pay you if you didn't deliver value, but we don't care about that. Isn't that odd? Just, we don't care about that. People pay you. I'm assuming you do deliver value. What we care about is whether you understand what coaching is. Because you can deliver value by helping someone out. You can deliver value because you are so smart and such an expert. You can give them tips and advice, which they will value and pay you for. And you're not a coach, right? So we don't care about that part. What we care about is, do you understand what coaching is? Do you understand this kind of transformation? Did the answer come from the person, or did the answer come from you? So you helped them out, but the answer came from you. And so that's not coaching. You don't know what coaching is, right? So this is the thing that ICF is so rigorous about, and has an ability, given 25 years, of actually being able to discern it. And so coaching schools that are ICF accredited adhere to pure coaching. And coaching schools that don't sometimes don't, right? So sometimes don't, but that's not always true, right? Because again, coaching schools founded by people who understand transformation actually are doing transformational work, right? But the problem is anyone can make money from it. So then you'll get coaching schools, and I've had people talk to me about it. They go, they told me I have to follow the GROW model, and they told me I have to, and you're like, oh, how much did you pay for that course? Well, it was like $300. And they said, I'm like, okay, just, yeah, I understand. So yeah, that's not really coaching, and they're like giving you these techniques and things and all that. So then that part gets really confusing, so that, you know, people have had these bad experiences of doing coach training, which they say, they told me I'm supposed to, and they gave me these techniques, and then they started, you know, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, it's bad experience, but that's kind of where some of that would come from. Yeah. But true, pure coaching, it's only transformational. It's inherent in its very definition. What it does is evokes from the other. This is an art. In our world, we are not conditioned that way. We do not come into this world. We basically come into this world where all improvement is people sharing experiences and knowledge with each other, which is basically taking the thoughts and intelligence that currently exist and in putting it into everyone and assuming that progress is made by getting just more and more people with the greatest smarts, right, to do this. That's not coaching, right? So coaching is inherent in coaching is evoking from the other. Well, what the hell are you evoking? If you're not inserting, what do you mean evoking? Do you see the very definition has an assumption that there would be something to evoke, something new, something unthought of, something from another realm that comes in new through this person? And it's an art in how do I draw that from them? And how do I resist in myself in this conversation to telling you the answer? This is the dilemma of coaching, the artistry in coaching. I know what they need to know. I already know who they are. I know they are the potential and possibility of the universe. So I can sit here and teach them, but words don't teach. They go in one ear and out the other, right? So there's not an art to that. There's not a mastery in that. That has no impact there. So this inserting from outside will do nothing. The reason I'm a coach is because I know that what I want to get good at always is how do I bring what I know out through that person. And I didn't mean that like what I know finitely, what I know as possibility, bring that out through that person. And they will surprise me with what it is they know about how to fix their business, grow their business, solve their business, all of that. They will surprise me. I will learn some things. And by the way, as they describe it, I would never do it like that. Oh, I would never do it like that because that I don't like that at all, right? And that's the part, well, where I self-manage that is another human being potential and possibility of the universe with a unique formation of what they're going to do in building a coaching business, and what they do may or may not be for me. So I don't have to even like it. I'm only paying attention to, are they lit up and excited by it? I've done my job. They are lit up and excited by it. They will get the results, right? And self-manage my own criticism of what they're saying, which is like, well, why would you do it like that? I tried that before. That's never going to work, right? It's like, yeah, who asked you?
What did you notice, Dominic? What was your experience like? What came through you? And you think about how because you've filled your practice and you've been doing this for years now, really successfully. So what kind of things emerged through that process for you in terms of like, this is what I discovered when I went on that path, and this is what's been really helpful to fill my practice? And it might not be your way, but just
yeah. My approach in this is I would say rather non-conventional, or not very conventional in terms of how to build a business or do any of that.
We love non-conventional, by the way.
What's that?
We love non-conventional.
Yeah. So in the starting, when I began, I had a coach that I was working with. So again, you got to know, I left an executive role in the corporate world, company car and stock, and that. And then you go from this to nothing. And now there's nothing, right? Now you're self-employed, right? And so it's sort of like, oh, okay. And I remember even the first time, before I was a coach and I'm going to be a consultant, and the first gig I got where I'm like, so what do you do here? Well, you need to write an invoice. You've got to send them an invoice. And so you send an invoice, and then you get this check and you go, holy shit, this is really cool. Like, you send an invoice and then they send you money, right? It's very different than when you're on payroll, where they just like deposit money in your payroll account, right? So it's how do I get clients, what happens? So I do a bit of consulting and I start to make a bit of money, and then get to this, going to be a coach, get some training. Following that, I'm clear. I don't want to be a consultant. I want to do coaching. I want to be a coach. So, but I don't have any clients. So I need clients. My coach and I have this conversation, and I'm like, so I want to totally move to just coaching. And so she says, all right. And so how will you start? Like, where do you think your clients are going to come from and all that? I said, I think I should have conversations with people. Great idea, right? You'll have conversations with people. Perfect. Anyway, it gets down to between now and our next call, how many conversations do you want to have? And I said, I'm gonna do 10 conversations. I'm gonna reach out to people, and that's great. So, you get really good learning from this, right? So I do the 1, 2, I may have hit 3 in the conversations. And I'm like, I don't like this at all, right? Like, I just don't like this, right? And get on the next call. I'm like, I don't like this. This is like, it's like I'm trying to sell something or convince them about I don't know what I'm doing, but I just don't like it, right? Like this. And so I get on the next call. So how'd it go? And I say, great. So you said you were going to do the 10 conversations. How did it all go? I go, well, I did 3. Oh, and that was great. It was great. I did 3 conversations, and I'm clear. I'm not doing that anymore. Right? She's, an ICF coach. So she was like, oh, I don't know. She's like, so now you've seen that. So then how will you be building your coaching practice? Like, how will you create that and have clients? And what comes out of my mouth is, well, I'm just going to attract them. And I hear it come out of my mouth, and I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, right? Like, and I'm like, that was stupid, right? But anyway, she's like, doesn't flinch. She's like, oh, so you're going to attract them. So I don't know what happened the rest of that call, but I get off the call and I go, that's stupid. Like, attract them. Like, how ridiculous a statement. But where it actually came from was a noticing of how stuff came to me. Like, when I left the corporate world, even in the jobs in the corporate world, there was a way that from, one job to the next, or promotion, it seemed to come. It seemed to flow. My first, consulting piece of work that I did, how it came, it came through a story. It didn't come through a strategy. Like, in other words, I can say, oh, well, what I did is I created a website and I blah, blah, blah. And then that got me. It came through a story. I had lunch with this friend and we were talking. And then 2 weeks later, I get this email, and it's like, it just came through a story as opposed to a strategy. So it was like a noticing how that came. And then what happened is, as it came, and then some other stuff would happen. What got me was I would see patterns of, I'd be sitting at my desk doing work, and an email would come in and someone say, hey, I hear that blah, 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 and we'd like to talk to you about such and such. And I can't believe this. This email, right? Like, I'd be so excited. I'd get up, I'd run over to my wife. I go, you don't know what happened. I just got this email from this person and they want to talk to me about this thing. And it's like, this is amazing how that went. And she's like, well, how come they called you? Like, how come they contacted you? Well, turns out they were having coffee with someone, and then my name came up, and then a lot of this was going on, and I was thrilled that it happened. But as you can tell, that's not a strategy. So I was like, I need a strategy. I need a way to build my business while ignoring the way my business was being built. So I need to figure this out, right? Well, after I said that ridiculous thing around I'm going to attract them, what I realized was, well, this is not going to work because this stuff is happening. But the other part I noticed was I would have these results, but if you went out a week or two, I'd suddenly go, oh my God, like, how am I going to get clients? Right. And then it's like, well, how did you get clients? Like, where did the clients come from? Oh, I don't know. Somebody emailed me last week or whatever. But anyway, how am I going to get clients? Right. And so a total ignoring of what was happening and a figuring out how I'm going to do this. So what started to is like, well, this would happen and then I'd forget. All I knew was I'd have these thrilling moments, which I would later forget and then just start worrying about how it was. So I actually created a practice. I thought, well, I need a practice, like I need some system because this is nuts, right? I need a system. I created something called an attraction journal, which is nothing. It was in Evernote, I did it. And all it is was a note that simply said September 2, the date. And it would say, email from so-and-so who wanted to talk about this, September 4th. Someone called, they wanted to introduce me to someone else who's looking for this or that, right? So I was just tracking, that's it, just like a line, right? So that what I could see is, oh, there it is again. Oh, look at that, happened again. And now I'm steeped in the teachings of Abraham Hicks, which speak to law of attraction and stuff like that. I spoke about this to Abraham in a hot seat conversation that said to me, the reason that worked for you, well, they didn't say it worked. they didn't say that worked. They said the reason that's working for you, it's, that you're finding it beneficial, is because what I was doing with it was, what actually instigated it was, I think it's terrible that this wonderful stuff happens and I don't appreciate it a little while later. So this stuff happens. And then I go out 2 weeks, 1 month later, and I'm going, where am I going to get a client? This is terrible. My business, like, how am I going to build my business? It's sort of like, well, wait a minute. What about those ones? Like why, right? It's like you're slapping in the face what's happening. You have no appreciation for what's going on. And so what started this was, I wanted to notice and appreciate every one of these things. Abraham said to me, it is in that feeling of appreciation that you find yourself in resonance and alignment with this greater part of you, because that feeling of appreciation, another word for appreciation may be love, right? So that feeling of appreciation, that sense or feeling of abundance and ease. So in the moment of doing this, you are in an alignment with that, and that is the energy or vibration which you emanate. And that vibration becomes more and more and more. And from that energy that you are is what is manifesting into the world that you are literally able to perceive. And so this practice was really a non-practice. It was more like, why don't you pay attention and appreciate what's going on? And so it made real for me what's kind of invisible, working invisibly. And by the way, because I'm a bit of a geek, I'm 11 years later now around this. You should see, I just put an entry in today because this morning I had something in my journal, right? That attraction journal, I was able to total by month. So you could literally get attraction numbers by month, by quarter, by year. I have 11 years of data. So when people say, how do you build your business? I attract it. Is that real? Well, I have statistics I could show you. I've got statistics if that's what you're looking for, but that wouldn't. So yes, it does work reliably, and there are metrics that kind of show the way it's working, right? So as I paid attention to it, that became it. And that's the way that my business has been, is in that way. So it's a more of an energetic creation, drawing to me what's a match. You cannot desire to make a difference in the world without getting hooked up with where it is you can make that difference. The asking and fulfillment of the asking are always in balance. Always in balance. There is someone desiring something for which you are the answer for. Someone desires something, and you are the answer to their asking. You, in the passion, in the what you love to do, are the answer to their asking. And so the thing is that the energies will match themselves up. And the only problem that's ever there is your thinking in resistance. You will cause some trouble in that. That's all that'll happen. You'll cause some trouble. But the way the energy works is, when something is needed, it will be fulfilled. And it will be fulfilled by the path of least resistance. So what's your job? What's your job? Is it to go find what's needed? Your job is to be the contribution, be the difference you want to make. Your job is to send that signal out so strongly so that it can meet where this calling and asking is. And it will meet all of it to the extent that you're willing to express it.
I could talk to you all day about this, Dominic, because it's such a fascinating subject. The one thing that's really jumping out at me is I just love the humanness element as well, right? It feels like we've gone full circle with our conversation, where the job, the coach role was kind of knocking on the door, like, hey, and you're like, no.
Yes,
no.
yes.
And the same thing happened with filling your practice, where it's like, hey, this is how to, and it's like, no, there's the system, there's a strategy.
I need a legitimate way.
Yeah.
That coach, that's not a legitimate job. Need a legitimate, that way of building the business, that's not real. That's not legit. We need a legitimate way of doing it.
I can liken it to me saying, it's like, I'm the car. No, I absolutely am the car. I am 100% the car. Like trying to convince myself that I'm this car, when actually when I'm able to see that I'm not, that's when it sounds to me as well, Dominic, as if it's not even it's attraction, but it's inevitability. It's a universal,
beautiful.
It's a universal law, right? It's like, where there's gratitude, there's energy, there's creation. Right. You know, I really hear that in what you're saying. It's such an important point.
I love that word, inevitable. It's like, it's inevitable. If you take a car at the top of the hill, remove it from park and remove the brake, and you push it from behind, it's inevitable what will happen. It only works one way. It's inevitable, right? So as you start to understand, how can you be in a state of appreciation and wanting to really contribute and bringing all of yourself in and wanting to express what that is? How can you be there and that not expressing into something? It's inevitable, right? It's inevitable. But what's it going to express into? Tell me, what is it? I don't know. Well, will I get a coaching business if I do that? Will that build me a coach? Would you? That's the problem right there. You're trying to like say what it's going to. That's nothing but resistance, right? Well, I look at other coaches though, they run Facebook ads and they're big on social media. And I'm like, well, how do you feel about that? I hate that. I don't want to do that at all. Well, okay, relax. That's the problem right there. And no one said you have to. Well, how am I supposed to build this business if I don't do what they're all doing? Like, it's just a mess, right? But and we go further and further from an easy way. It's easy. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. Are you sure it's inevitable? Are you sure? Well, why don't you have that same question when we take the car at the top of the hill, we remove everything and push it? How come you're not saying, is it really inevitable that that car is going to roll down the hill like that? It's like, see, you trust that entirely. And yet, how come you trust that? Well, come on, everyone knows about gravity. What? What are you talking about? Gravity. Well, what's that? What's this invisible thing? It's this energy. What? What are you saying? There's an invisible thing? Really? You believe this? Well, you can tell by the results and the outcome that there's gravity. You could never prove it, but you can see this. And the reason you know there's gravity, and we're labeling it something, it's just some energy, but the characteristics of it are reliable, inevitable, as Sam said, because the reason it's inevitable is it's invariable. If you one day did that and it started going up the hill, whoa, you really don't know what's going on then, right? You took the car at a park, you pushed it, and it began going up the hill. Okay, now you really don't know what's going on. But when it works reliably a certain way, you can tell there's something going on, the nature of which you can come to understand, even though in describing it, you might sound like an idiot. Well, it's this invisible thing and it's called gravity. And I know, and you know, it works for you too in your life. No, it doesn't. I don't have invisible things going on in my life. Like, it's like, no, you do. You do. It's there for all of us. Yeah.
Love that. Well, if the world can believe Isaac Newton when an apple hit him on the head, I'm sure they'll believe you when you show them statistics that prove it.
That, by the way, is the way in the, if anything we say is true, and this is the dilemma in coaching, right? Because the reason you're a coach is, you can't teach it. Otherwise you'd be a teacher. You can't train them. Otherwise you would have been a trainer. That's a way better, easier way to do it. You could just be a trainer and then train people and they would all get results, right? So, but that you've tried that stuff didn't work. So you decided to be a coach. So, but the reason coaching works, especially transformational coaching, as what Lisa said, like when you get what real coaching is, right? It's transformation. This is the only thing that will work, right? So when you get that, what you know is that the thing you're talking about, which is invisible, so the Isaac Newton with the thing he's talking about that's invisible, that it's working this way, including for them, because it does. You see it, right? So you're not fooled. You don't have this thing. It's like, oh, wow, I don't understand why you're struggling. I don't understand why that doesn't work for you. There's only one explanation. They are in resistance to all that they are. It's the only explanation, because this works. It works for everyone, and it's inevitable. It's invariable. It doesn't work differently for me than it does for you. So when you're coaching, you see that. And now the trick is, how can they see it? Well, their own life will show them right? So if I can just shut up long enough and prevent myself from telling them, it's the minute I tell them, we'll get into an argument, right? You know, there's this invisible thing, and if you do this, no, there isn't, not for me, and it doesn't work that way for me. So we'll just go into some spinning. So if I can just somehow keep pointing them to, hey, you notice that? Hey, you got married. How'd you meet your wife? Well, like, how'd that happen? How'd that work out? Hey, you bought this house. How'd you find this house? Like, you start pointing to things. The reason is because you know it works this way. You know that there's some story they'll tell you which will demonstrate what's happening, and you know they'll see it, right? So, yeah.
Dominic, I'm conscious of your time. Like I say, I could really talk about this for hours and hours because it's just so fascinating, and there's so many questions going on in my mind right now. But thank you. I just want to say thank you. And how do people get in touch with you if they want to work with you, if they want to find out more, if they want to continue the conversation? How do they do that?
So personal websites, easy. They could friend me on Facebook too, and then but a personal website, which is my name, so dominicscaffidi.com, is simple. And then if you're corporate executive types, there's my company site. It's okay, it'll link off the Dominic Scaffidi one. And on Facebook too, I have a Facebook group where we explore a lot of this stuff. The group is called Ask and It Is Given. How thoughts become things, and it's a lot of sort of this sort of exploration and inquiry of noticing how reality is created, how we create our own reality, how we are creating everything through this little guy. It's not the little guy creating, but it is created through this perspective. And so yeah, so those are several ways.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Dominic.
It's been a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the conversation. I had fun, in case you couldn't tell. So